Yes, so we're starting this 15th chapter today. And what was the essence of the 14th chapter? Who can tell me that? You don't remember the essence of the 14th chapter? Or did
So,
find
The modes of the nature.
okay, go ahead, Mataji.
You said just the essence, right?
yeah, just
The
if you can give me an
modes.
essence. Yeah.
The modes and the modes competing with us, actions in the mode, and the pure life, the last 19 to 27. So chapter is basically teaching us to be introspective and understand how the modes are working, and for us to enhance our bhakti process.
Okay.
Prabhuji, the summary is
Yes, go ahead, Mataji.
Rukmini Priya Mataji is continuing. Sorry, I did not want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. So, what I understood, Prabhuji, from that chapter was that the three modes of material nature are nothing but the divine energy of Krishna, and the only way to overcome it is with complete surrender, with complete love and devotion. That is the only way we can get, means we will not be influenced by these three modes. And we always swing between all these three modes, and the only way to be elevated from these modes is to have a unconditional love for Krishna.
Unconditional love. Yes. Okay. Anyone else?
Haribo?
Haribol Prabhu.
Yeah, the thing I figured out, or just blew my mind, is that if you could get to the mode of goodness and then you take Krishna's mercy, you get the pure goodness, and then the modes don't bother you. And the whole point in that chapter, which blew my mind, is just the description of how the modes are. So listening and listening and listening to that information, you can pinpoint everything in reference to how people are acting. And the thing that was pretty interesting is that our age is so tripped out, we don't even have anybody hanging out in the mode of goodness, hardly at all. It's all in the mode of passion. All the things that, I thought might be in the mode of goodness, they ain't happening. Putting in a hospital and all that stuff, that's the mode of passion. So I think it was just amazing, because when you get a perspective of something like this, and then you get the key to getting over it by going into mode of pure goodness, by being Krishna conscious, which means devotional service, which means chanting the holy name. And that's about it for me. But I was enlivened by this information, even though it was so foreign to me. It was so strange. I kept listening to it. I said, what are they talking about? What is this shadowy energy that we... And like she said, this is the Lord's energy. Yeah, yeah, it's his energy already. But what is it? I kept listening and listening and listening. And, you could actually separate by a person's activities. You could see how people are functioning. And you can actually understand why they have such nightmares, too. And I can see why I'm in a nightmare. Because now I have to see what my goals are a lot more clearer. And I think I was very much enlivened by what Krishna says. He's the people in previous lives, the sages, that they understood this knowledge. And from this knowledge I'm giving you, this is the heaviest knowledge I've given you yet. I said, well, what's the challenge here, Krishna? What are you saying? Which was, his genius of trying to drag us into something that is such a heavy quagmire that you're so excited to get over it that you have to listen. And then if you do listen, yeah, it is the heaviest way to get through it, because one of the biggest hurdles is what is going on? Can we make some sense out of this energy? So I liked, that's about all I can remember. I only listened to it 14 times.
Yeah. Thank you,
If I,
Prabhu.
I got a lot of other questions too that I'm going to ask you, but I'm not going to say nothing. I just want to hear what we got going on.
Okay, yeah. You brought out a good point, right? That we have to promote ourselves to the mode of goodness. Prabhupada says that in the preface to the Nectar of Instruction. Once we are in the mode of goodness, then everything, how to make further progress, that will be revealed to us. But till we are in ignorance and passion, it's not possible for anybody to understand what's going on and how to make spiritual advancement. Controlling the senses is very much necessary. And what are the senses doing? They are interacting with the sense objects. And so this whole world, as we'll read in today's, when we start the 15th chapter, it's like a perverted reflection of the material world. So yeah, we all are, how do you say that? We all are Rupanugas. We are followers of Rupa Goswami. So we should learn from Rupa Goswami. I was at Radhakund last Monday. And at Radhakund, we chanted the Nectar of Instruction there. Rupa Goswami wrote the Nectar of Instruction there with Radhakund. So we all have to be Rupanugas. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yeah, well, that was a nice statement you just made, but give me some more nectar. You got something else before it fades away. You could tell all of us, something else that went nice. What was going on? I mean, what's the spiritual nectar that Maharaj gave us? Come on.
It was very blissful, Prabhu. We went to all those places. We went to Barsana, and then we went to Govardhan, and we did the Parikrama. Then all the Radha Kund, Uddhav Kund, all these kunds where you can go. Govind Kund, where we have the famous pastime of Madhavendra Puri, where Krishna came and gave him milk. So hard to summarize in a few minutes, bro. But yes, it's blissful. It's blissful. And then we went to Raman Reti. Raman Reti, when you go to Raman Reti, there's where Krishna used to play with his friends. The soil is so soft, you can walk barefoot on it. Actually, everybody walks barefoot there. It's so soft. The soil is like silky soft. It's said that because the cows didn't want Krishna's feet to be hurt, so they kind of grinded all the rocks into fine powder. And that's what Raman Reti is, where Krishna used to play with his friends. Yes, many things true.
Well, thank you. I've got to squeeze you for the nectar. Thank you for
Hare
your
Krishna,
mercy.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandak Pranam. Prabhu, did you roll in Raman Reti?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We distributed a lot of books there also.
Yeah. And the Reti is so cool, right? It's like cold,
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went over there too, Prabhuji, when I went 2 months ago.
Okay. Yeah, Vrindavan is a mystical place.
Yeah, it's it's like you can actually feel it. Like, when we walk on it, the sand is actually takes you somewhere else,
Yeah, it's very soft. Yes. Takes you somewhere else. That's a good way of putting it. Okay, let's get to our chapter today, 15. So we are doing 15th chapter. It's titled as Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottam Yoga. I had briefly mentioned 13th chapter. In the 22nd verse, Krishna had talked about a seed, right? Like not a seed, but what's the cause of everything? Bhunkte prakriti jan guna. So Krishna had said bhunkte. So the tendency to enjoy is the seed to all what we are going through. So that's 13th chapter is the beginning of this whole section, the section of Jnana, 13 to 18 chapter. So once Krishna gave us the seed, then what is watering the seed? That's the mode of the nature, the three modes. That's what we talked about in the 14th chapter. And then once the seeds has been watered, it converts to a tree. And the tree is going to be discussed in this chapter now, 15th chapter. And in the 16, there'll be extremes of the tree. 17, what's in middle of the tree. So that's all starts from that verse, which we said, right? It's Bij Vakya. 13:22. Bhungte prakrtisto, no, bhungte prakrti jan guna. Krishna is saying, Karanam guna sangasya sadas yoni janmeshu. So that's what is bringing us in all these births. So that was the starting point, and was the 13th chapter. So now we're coming to the yoga of the Supreme Person. This is the 15th chapter. And in the 13th chapter, we also talked about, right, what was that? Jnanam Geyam, Kshetra Kshetragya, and Purusha Prakriti. So those were the two things that Krishna had talked about. And then he had explained that how by bhakti we can get a proper understanding of all those things. And then 14th chapter was analysis of the material nature. And then we talked about how if we transcend it, Krishna brings this out in the 14th or 25th verse, right? 25th, 24th. Bhakti yavanti yavan yashasvi tattvataha. So Krishna brings that out in the 14th chapter. And then in this chapter, Krishna will explain that Bhagavan is the ultimate reality by emphasizing that Bhagavan is Purushottama, the greatest person. Purusha, Uttama. Uttama means the best. Purusha means the person. He is the best of all the living beings. That's why this chapter is called Purushottam Yoga, and Prabhupada has translated it to as Yoga of the Supreme Person. Okay? So let's go to what it is. So summarizing it into this, it's one of the smallest chapters, 20 verses. So 12th and 15th chapter are the smallest chapter in Bhagavad Gita. So the first 5 verses, Krishna will give a description of this world and then the spiritual world, right? This world, right? Just this world, yes. And then in the 6 to 11 will be more of a spiritual world. 12 to 15 will present Krishna as the maintainer, and then there will be an essence of the last few verses, out of which the 16, 17, and 18 are the essence. They're primarily like we read about the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita. Here it's more like 3 shloka Bhagavad Gita that's going to be talked about. So let's get on to the chapter. Here's the chapter. Yoga of the Supreme Person. So as I mentioned, this chapter will start with an analogy of a tree. So let's read this. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adha Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavid. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So Prabhupada starts by telling us that why is Krishna talking about this? Because he's talked about Bhakti Yoga. Somebody can ask, okay, what is the relevance of Bhakti Yoga? The Vedas in Bhakti Yoga. And then in this chapter, as Prabhupada is telling us, that purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna, to know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you don't know, you might have memorized the whole Vedas, but it's of not much use. So this is a famous picture you all must have seen at some point or the other, which describes this chapter, or at least these first few verses. So what Krishna is saying, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakham. So it's Urdhva Mula. Urdhva means inverted, Mula means tree. So this is like a tree which is inverted. Okay. And where is it coming from? Topmost planet of this creation, where Lord Brahma is sitting. And there the roots are coming downwards. Okay, so it's Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakham. So it has its root upward and its branches downwards. And the leaves are the Vedic hymns. Okay, so leaves are the Vedic hymns here. Okay, and then there will be more description in the forthcoming chapter, in forthcoming verses. So, so just knowing the leaves alone, and as he's saying, is not enough, right? So just by knowing the Vedic hymns, one does not become Vedavit. To become one Vedavit, one has to completely know the tree. Right? So in the earlier verses also, so Krishna is going to ask us to go beyond this tree, which has been watered by the modes of nature. Traigunya Vishya Veda, how the Traigunya Vishya Veda. In the second chapter, there was this verse, right? Traigunya Vishya Veda. So three gunas Krishna is asking Arjuna to go beyond those three Vedas. And then also in the sixth chapter, there was Shabda Brahman Ati Vartate, that Ati Vartate means transcendent. So Krishna has been mentioning this. So one who's the knower of Vedas, who's the knower of the Vedas? One who knows the Ved, who knows, not just know the Vedic hymns, but he's understood the purpose of those Vedic hymns. That's a person is Vedavit, right? So, and the tree represents material existence in the sense that here things are upside down. Things are opposite of the way they should be. In material world, Krishna is not the center. I have become the center. Okay, so it's me. It's all about me. I have excluded Krishna out of the picture, right? And then Prabhupada explains that this. Or let's just go read the purport. What is saying here? Interesting purport. Entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree, right? And then Prabhupada says, the tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. And then, so whatever we see in this world, this is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality, right? So everything what we see here is also in the spiritual world, but it's being used for its true purpose. It's not a reflection. It's being used for what it's supposed to be used for, right? Because there Krishna is the center, the spiritual world, right? So that's the difference here. That's why it's called a perverted reflection. And then Prabhupada mentions in this purport somewhere. Okay, so here, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its root upwards, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and root upward. So it's only in a reflection where we can see this kind of a tree, an inverted tree, right? So that's what is being referred to out here. So Krishna is introducing a metaphor here, that metaphor of inverted tree, and by that he's explaining what this world is. So what has this watering of the seed of bhukti, of enjoying, the enjoying tendency, what has it resulted in this banyan tree, of which there is no end. Right? It just keeps going. There's no end to it. For somebody who's engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. There's no end to the banyan tree. Right? And then there are roots. From Vedic hymns, what do we get? Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. Right? But then that's not the essence of the Vedas. The essence of Vedas is that Krishna is the supreme. But we get engaged in the fact that I'm here to enjoy. I'm here to enjoy. So yeah, so this is a poetic metaphor. There's a lot concentrated in it. Rather than focusing on the technical analysis of each point, we need to understand the essential message which is being conveyed here. Right? You cannot subject poetry to technical analysis all the time, or you can do it sometimes. but the meaning has to be more of relished or caught than to be systematically analyzed. So the important point here is the whole tree of material existence, and there is an individual attachment to this tree. Okay, so that's the essence here we have to understand. Okay, going back to the okay. Yeah, so leaves are the Vedic hymns, and you can see the fruits are dharma, arth, kama, moksha. Economic development, religiosity. That's the fruits here of this tree. So we'll go to the next verse that talks further about it. Adhasyardvam prashartastasya shaka guna pravardir vishaya pravala. Adhasyamulani anushantatani karmana bandhini manushya loke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of the human society. The tree is being further explained here. Okay, and Prabhupada has given more details. That the lower part of this tree are, animals, probably even human beings. Upper parts are more like demigods. Okay, and the twigs are sense objects, and the branches are the senses. That's one interesting point that is being brought about here. The twigs are the sense objects. So, and then the branches are the senses. I mean, that's what I've written. Yes, branches are the senses, and twigs are the sense objects. Okay. So what it means is that branches are one that is connected to the trunk of the tree. That's what a branch is. And then twig can come out of a branch. So what is happening is that the branches, being the senses, they are connecting with the sense objects, which are the twigs. Okay, that's the way to understand that part, twigs and branches. But in a broader sense, the thing to understand here is it's a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and by different activities, we can be at the lower part of the tree or the upper part of the tree, and then we can interact the tree, and then we'll see in the later verses how Krishna asked us to cut down this tree. But then there's a lot of attachment and aversion, which is like the roots, and those roots are further strengthening our entanglement in this tree, in this inverted tree. So those are the subsidiary roots. Okay, so we talked about the twigs. The subsidiary roots are our attachment and aversions. Okay. So now, after having talked about the tree, the Krishna is saying the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything is extended since time immemorial. Right? So what Krishna is doing, he's explaining the nature of the material world by comparing it to the spiritual world. So the soul becomes bound by karma. So how does this bondage happen? It starts by bhukti. Right? The way to overcome this problem is elevate our consciousness. So Bhagavad Gita is teaching us to look at the things from a bigger perspective. because everything we see is not real. Right? So the verses are helping us realize the reality and gravity of our bondage. But then by striving to understand Krishna, our actions will attain perfection. Right? And this world is a very overwhelming proposition. So more deeper we dive in the scriptures, better we understand our relationship with the external and internal potency. This is necessary for us. Devotees strongly believe that their reward comes from their relationship with Krishna. So they don't get entangled in this material world, in this tree. So in this third verse now, Krishna is telling us that it's very difficult to perceive. It's not so. What many people do is, oh, I'll try to understand everything, So that's the way where people want to understand God by using their intellect. But Krishna here is saying it's very difficult to perceive. Right? He's saying, Narupam aseha tato pallabhete. That it's very hard to perceive. It's cannot be perceived actually. Not hard. Right? So what you can do is you can cut down this tree by the weapon of detachment. So what Krishna is stressing upon here is the fact that we all have choices. To overcome illusion, we have to choose. So we move towards detachment. So the first part here is Krishna is saying tree is, what was that? In the earlier verse, Krishna said it's imperishable tree, right? The first two words Krishna said, by imperishable banyan. It's an imperishable. So the tree is imperishable. So now somebody can say here, Krishna is asking us, what was that verse? One must cut down this strongly rooted tree. And the earlier Krishna is saying that it's an imperishable tree, which is confusing, right? What does it mean? On one hand, Krishna is saying it's imperishable. On the other hand, he's asking us to cut it also. So what we cut is not the tree itself, but the attachment. That's what we are cutting down. Okay? And how do we cut down the attachment? It's not, so knowledge can only take us to a distance, right? But then we have to have a higher connection. Then we can be released from this prison. Krishna is saying, don't try to understand it, just get out of it. Right? Like second chapter, we read it, Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehinam Raso Varjam Raso Piyasa Param Dishtva Nivartate. That Param Dishtva. And when you have a higher vision, then you can detach yourself. So knowledge is good, but if we limit ourselves to the knowledge and don't have a higher attachment, that is an attachment to Krishna, then it's easy for us to get lost in the whole process. And as soon as we get spiritually weak, Maya's plan starts to look good again. But if we keep ourselves physically and spiritually fit, have a good outlook on life, if we are spiritually strong, we are inoculated. Maya may be still around, but we won't be affected by it. Okay? And so it's very difficult. It cannot be perceived, but we have to cut it down through a weapon of detachment. But then we don't stop there. That's what I was highlighting. See, somebody might say that, oh, I know I'm a body. I'm not a body, I'm a soul. Now I don't need Krishna. What do I need Krishna for? But we all are looking for some spiritual platform where we can have a relationship. It's not a dry process. Impersonalism is dry. When there is no relationship, the person falls down, comes back. But if there is a relationship that's existing, then we don't fall down. So that's what the next part of the verse is. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything is extended since time immemorial. So the first part is detachment, and the second part is connecting with Krishna. So devotional service, it's neither about renunciation and nor it's about enjoyment. It is about dedication. If one is dedicating one's mind and activities to Krishna, that's perfection in whatever position one is. Right? So it's all perfect if one's engaged in Krishna's service. So, Haribol Prabhu?
This is pretty amazing what you're saying, because this is a lot of knowledge here in this Bhagavad Gita that I've only saw bits and pieces. And so I started taking this class, and it's just, each chapter is just so full of different perspectives and intense knowledge. But how could I hang in there for 50 years then? Because what I did do with not knowing so much knowledge, but I did something, was I just got detached from the material world by being attached to Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
And Prabhupada is none other than the manifestation of devotional service and all facets of it. So my facet of devotional service was, I was engaged in activities, and I was engaged with a desire to share it with others, to deliver the mail. And with that, and with the keeping a cool head and patience, which seems rare as I move on, that so much gets revealed to you. Prabhupada says in the beginning preface, just stick with it, stay focused, and everything will come to you. So I patiently have been, inching my way through this, but really, into devotional service,
Mm-hmm.
and even the realization of what the depths of realization of what devotional service is through this Bhagavad Gita. Now I see that, it's the catalyst to all existence for one in Krishna consciousness. You're detaching from something, or you're trying to cut it down, but at the same time, even if you don't know anything, if you grab hold of the right thing, and engage properly, this whole thing becomes manifest. Like, the Vedas, we know the Vedas. How do we know it? How can we be beyond the Vedas? Simply by chanting the holy name and engaging devotional service under Prabhupada's guidance, you're past the Vedas already, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
But still, Krishna exposes to all this knowledge, like you're trying to tell me, so that I can get more fortified. But it's not like a course in complete academics, like you're saying. It's it's devotional. Devotional has so many more aspects beyond the mind, and you have to do these activities too. You have to have practical application, of these activities. Even if you don't know what it is, just do the practical application, even if you don't know that you're doing practical application. Because in time, that word will make sense to you too.
Yeah, that's a very good point you bring out, Prabhu. If we are able to find out what Prabhupada wants, what the Acharya wants, and then do it, even if we are not good at it, who cares, We are sincere, we try, and then the master from within our heart shows us how to move forward. Right? And as you brought out a good point, knowledge. Yeah, so Krishna is giving us the knowledge, right? So anything we want to achieve, in any way we want to improve in spiritual life, two elements needed: knowledge and practice. Right? If we have sufficient knowledge and we apply it, that makes us, self-directing. We can, Krishna from within heart can direct us. And even after speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said to Arjun, right? Vimrishata dasheshena yethechasi tatha kuru. Now you deliberate on this fully and then do what you wish to do. So what does deliberation mean? Means thorough consideration, awareness of the consequences, and then allowing time to mature, slow and steady. And you brought out another good point that you said that for 50 years you were reading it, but then you did something very important. And what was that? That was surrender. You surrendered to Prabhupada. So what Krishna does is, if our life is on like a number line and we are in the negative, when we get this knowledge, we come to the neutral platform. We come to zero somewhere. But then what to do after we come to zero? We have to go to the positive. What is that positive? That is attachment to Krishna. Right? So that's it. So the knowledge and then the practice part comes in, and then everything becomes perfect, right? So that's how we move on the spiritual path. So yeah, you brought out some good points there, Prabhu. Thank you. That's what Krishna is telling us here. And Prabhupada, I think he gives some very good points. Probably it's the next
So
verse.
Prabhuji,
But
one more thing I want to add. Like I was listening to Prabhupada's lecture, and I mean, even if you're, he was saying that even if you're not able to attain all of the knowledge right away, or trying to attain knowledge, you just have to remember the Harinam, and that will automatically take you there. Like the Kirtan, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
yeah, that's a good point. Yes, it's the name has the whole potency. So we just keep ourselves on that. Thank you. So yes, so we and Prabhupada is giving us the way that how do we get detached? By discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion and the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to him. Right? That's the important part. Ashanga sastena dridhena chitva. So first is asanga sastena dridhena chitva, that you cut it down. Okay, fine. I've come from negative to zero, neutral platform. But now what do I do? Then tatha padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti priya. Tamevam chadya purusham prapadde yatha pravarti prasharta purani. Then what you do is you surrender to Krishna, from whom everything has started. That's the positive part. So always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Smartavyo satatam Vishnu, vismartavyo na jatuchit. Mahaprabhu gave us this verse. So always remember Krishna. That's the positive part. That's where that's the culmination. So knowledge itself is not of much value if it doesn't take us to the positive. And yes. Then comes the fifth verse. This is a kind of a foundational verse, a very quintessential verse. Nirman moha ajita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama dvandve vimukta sukha dukha samagyer gachanti amudha padam avyayam tat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Yeah. So, Nirman Moha, without mana, without any man, prestige, and without any moha, illusion. So, Vinivritta Kama, the phrase Vinivritta Kama refers to detachment from sensual objects, right? But why do we have to detach from sensual objects? Because it's the desire for sensual enjoyment that's binding the soul here. Right? Bhungte prakriti jan guna. Going back to the seed, 1322. Right? So right, we talked about that example when you're watching a movie. There are a lot of emotions coming in, right? But if one is not getting, is not connecting to the movie, then he's been detached, right? He's not getting overwhelmed with the emotions he's seeing in the movie. The emotions will not come to him if you're not watching the movie or you're not connected, you're not attached to it. So yeah, Dvandve Vimukta, so he becomes detached from the dualities. Right? So that kind of a person who's being talked about here is not caught up in the material energy. And what's that? A person who's the material energy makes us a mudha, right? But then a person who's detached becomes amudha. Amudha means intelligent, unbewildered. Mudha means he's been fooled by Maya, but somebody who's in this consciousness, in nirvana moha jita sanga dosha, he's amudha, right? That person will attain eternal destination. So, and then in the 8th chapter, we read a bit about what is the nature of that abode. Avyakta akshara ityuktas tamahu paramam gatin yam prapena nivartante tadhama paramam mama. What is the nature of that abode? That you never come back from. It's imperishable. And you can attain that supreme abode by surrender. So this verse is the elaboration of the previous verse. Tameva chadyam purusham prapadde. One has to surrender to Krishna. So how the surrender is to be done is explained in this verse. And Prabhupada explains the surrendering process here, in this purport also here. First he's saying, one should not be deluded by pride. So we are always puffed up, thinking that I'm the lord of this material nature. For such a person, it's very hard to surrender. So one should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not the lord of the material nature, the supreme is the lord. So this is something we read in the earlier purport. Prabhupada had mentioned this. Discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures and hearing from self-realized souls. So what does that do? That gets rid of our pride. Okay? That's the beginning of the process of surrender. Okay. Then not expecting any honor. That's another challenge in becoming or surrendering. Not expecting any honor. Right? That's another aspect to it. And then not having a sense of proprietorship. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And then he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. That is possible. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we sometimes don't admit our weakness. But then we need to be strong enough to admit that we are not strong enough, that we are weak. And we can put on a mask of peacefulness. But unless some shelter is taken within that mask, within that mask cannot stay for a long time. The mask will fall off in the adversity of this world. Right? So for a conditioned soul, it is very hard to admit that I am weak. Devotees have a self-confidence in the form that they have confidence on Krishna, and they take shelter of Krishna. Right? So they see themselves as a tool in Krishna's hand. As long as one thinks that I can do it all by myself, then there's pride, and then this nirman moha jita sanga dosha does not come. We have this sense of duality, which keeps us bound here. Yes. So, as I say, this is the yes,
you know, this is something else too. Okay, this is not this information here. This exposing distress, happiness, or even the point of what do you call it, pride, because the way we're cultivated and conditioned is that we know it all, and how did you make it from here to the bank? I figured it out. You know, everything we all figure out, and I'm realizing this because I'm trying to preach to certain people, and they're very close, But when I try to explain to them, they say, "Oh, I know. It is the worst poison to hear to my ears that they don't, because they don't know. None of us really know. So then where's the gold mine, or where's the ore, or where's that radioactivity that will transform us?" And that is like this association.
Mm.
You have to go to somebody that really has the truth, and just because it's exposed here, I mean, that pride and everything, people can't even put their finger on that. I'm proud. I'm not proud. I just know what I know, and I know everything on how to get it together. That is so full of pride, and you don't even see it. We don't see it.
Yeah.
When you start putting a flashlight, on all this, the spiritual master puts his flashlight on this. I mean, then you can see that you don't even think you're bewildered. You don't
Yeah.
even think that. We have no idea. These certain words that you're bringing out here, those are the keys to getting somewhere. But we're not even. So many of us are not near it. When I hear it, then I start thinking, oh, well, I guess I did get rid of my pride, but I wasn't looking at it like that. I was looking at, I'm just following someone else and let someone drive the car. Well, that's really humility. That's really humbleness. When you really surrender, the pride is left at the back door then.
And when we surrender, the pride goes away.
Yes, I can see it, but when I'm trying to communicate to people, they got a long way to go. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what Prabhupada saw when he came here. I mean, I remember he said in a lecture in the CC in the early days in New York, he goes, so much misunderstanding, so much. He said it 4 times if he didn't say it once. I said, what are you talking about, Prabhupada? What's a misunderstanding? And it's just such covering of the material dust. And this is the dust. All these things that are being pointed out here, it's a part of an evolution of our consciousness that it doesn't start overnight. It depends on each person, actually. Everyone is different in their evolutionary process, too. So some things will make so much sense, and the rest of it will be like hieroglyphics, a foreign language. Or, yeah, that ain't me. I'm past that one, boy. And you're the worst one. Yeah, this is, when I'm thinking of this, because I'm writing it down, I'm seeing, it might make sense now, but so much of this is so much of this, everyone is buried in this, the conditioning. This is, when you take apart that word and see the threads of conditioning, these are the things that create conditioning. It's really intense when you say it. It just stimulates my brain thinking, when I'm trying to communicate to others and students and things. But then when I hear their voice, then I realize, well, then what happens here? It's a gradual process too.
Yeah.
And so you have to be like a doctor. What do? You give them good association. You give them the chanting. Prabhupada had a daily program for everybody, and it was so intense that all it did was a process of detox, a process of cleansing, a process of cutting down, a process of separating. Whether you knew it or not, it had its effect. It did have its effect, and it does have its effect, and it will always have its effect because it's rooted in the absolute.
Yeah.
Very special. Thank you so much. I mean, when you point this out, this is really special for us to, and we have to imbibe it enough to communicate with others. This is physician, heal thyself, but then help others. So if we can't figure it out, we're not going to be able to communicate. We're not going to be able to help them. Well, you take your hand out of the material existence. Well, what do you put your other hand on? That's where it all comes in. You have to have a whole big program of things to get a hold of, and that's called Krishna consciousness. This Krishna consciousness is a society of devotees steeped in this heavy understanding of what needs to be done based on the guidance of the predecessor Acharya and the original spiritual master Krishna, speaker of the Gita. I mean, this is
But this is the biggest thing, is to help that, to be, to understand. Prabhupada said, seek out that as society of devotees, because and that's what happens. So where we go, we have to be touchstones to this in society. We're all out working in society, and we have to be touchstones of that. This person I've been hanging out with 3 years, he's starting to wear bib overalls. Well, okay, that's all right. But I'm trying to get him to chant. When we talk, he says Hare Krishna, and he understands that we're trying to do spiritual activity. But it's 3 years I've been associating and talking, but we have to realize that this is our real goal. We all gotta get healthy here. But we can finish this Bhakti Sastri. We got to start finding people to contaminate, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the whole purpose of Bhakti Sastri, is to understand the books threadbare, as Prabhupada said, that you should read my books threadbare, and then digest it and present it in a way that others can understand it. And for that, we have to surrender. That's the important part Prabhupada is highlighting here, right? Admitting that I am not strong requires a lot of strength, right? Prabhupada would always write, what Prabhupada would, in the poem he wrote on the Jalduta, he ended it by saying, insignificant beggar. So he always thought himself insignificant and unfortunate. But Prabhupada was still so hopeful and always praying to Krishna, right? That people may understand his words, right? He was just standing at Boston. He said, Krishna, what are you expecting me to do here? You think these people are going to even understand a word of what I'm going to tell them? So he was not pretending to be very strong, but then his strength, that strength that he had, was coming from his dependence and surrender to Krishna. That's where he was getting. That was the powerhouse of all the energy Prabhupada had, and that changed the world. And that gave him the strength to, to instill confidence in his followers. Once Prabhupada was he was giving a class, and he said, if you read one chapter of Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, every day, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Can you just imagine such a thing coming from Prabhupada? Only a self-realized soul, a person who is fully connected to Krishna, can say such a thing. That you read one chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam every day and you'll go back home, back to Godhead in this life. And he said that 3 or 4 times in that lecture. So his strength is coming from Krishna, his connection to Krishna. So yes, he got detached from this material world, but that's not where he stopped. He got attached to Krishna also. So he's the living proof of this verse, Nirmana Moha, that we are hearing, the foundational principle by which he made advancement in spiritual life. And tolerance, humility, giving respect to others, not expecting anything in return. So having that attitude that helps us advance. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, well, I fail miserably. I fail miserably at that. Not shutting up and have humility. And if you don't have that state of mind, it's a state of mind. If you don't get that state of mind, you're not going to get the nectar.
Oh yeah, so we'll not be able to get the nectar if we don't have that state of mind. Yeah.
The more I think I got it, the less I got
it. Yeah, there was this Mahatma Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's disciples. He says that there are 4 words that block all knowledge to us. It blocks everything from coming to us, which kind of put a block to it. He says, I already know that. These are the 4 words. I already know that. That just blocks everything from us. All the knowledge. And I meet so many people when we're distributing books. They say, oh, I already know that. I'm good. So that blocks that knowledge, that blocks them from coming to the positive, that blocks them from surrendering.
And you don't see you're saying it. You don't even see you're saying it. You don't think it. You know, subconsciously,
Yeah,
you have to be very conscious, because subconsciously you have no idea what you're doing. That is
yeah.
the block. You know,
That's the
so
block.
that's, you know, that state of mind. We have to uncover what that word means. What does that mean? Well, I know what it means. Yeah, you do not. Otherwise, you'd be where you're supposed to be. You know, I don't know that state of. I don't even know what that state of mind means.
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah.
It's deeper than what I think. Otherwise, I'd be chanting in ecstasy, and I would be choking up when I chant.
Yeah.
I got to get that state of mind. But how does it come? By association. You know, when someone like you
Yes.
brings it up and says, "I know that." Oh wow, I know that.
Mhm.
I know that. No, you don't. You don't know what it means to be humble. You don't know. You don't know what it means to have that state of mind. You know, so
Yeah.
it's fine. It's fine though, because Krishna does give you so much happiness that you, if you sit and reflect on where you've been and where you're going, you know, you can still at least say, yeah, this is the right path. I just got to keep going. That's all. I just got to stay with it. And Super Soul's watching too. He's watching what's your subconscious. You know, what is your subconscious? That has to get purified too. It's not, you know, Krishna conscious on the outside. That's a subconscious in the inside too. That's really heavy. It becomes the world. The real Kurukshetra is within ourselves, you know, and the real tolerance is ourself. I can't let myself overpower me. When I say I can't find state of mind, no, you tolerate yourself to the point you get that state of mind. Tolerate your stupidity and your shortcomings. Tolerate it so you can get what you got to get, isn't it?
Yeah.
That should help us all.
Thank you, bro. That's the 5th verse. And 6th verse. So now in the 5th verse, Krishna mentioned about an abode, right? Padam gachanti mudha padam avyayam tat. That and attain to that eternal kingdom. So there's this kingdom has been talked about, and Krishna will elaborate further about that kingdom. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. So the abode was talked about in the previous verse. It indicates that the abode is self-luminous. Sun, moon are in the spiritual world. They are there, but they're not needed. It is only to enrich the background of the pastime that Krishna is doing. That sun and moon are there, right? They're not needed for illumination as we need it in this material world, right? So Prabhupada also have added the word electricity here in this electricity, just to convey the point that it is self-luminous. Right? So when Krishna is talking about, he's focusing or focusing on material world, he's Tadhama Paramamma. So he's saying that this that supreme abode of mind is not illumined. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Right? So he's saying he's talking about himself. So he's bringing his own self, right? Mind, my supreme abode, right? He's talking about him in the first person, right? So he's focusing about something beyond this world. He's talking about in person. When sometimes Krishna talks about the material world, he talks about himself in a third person. You might have noticed that. So sometimes, you know, we when a scripture is translated, it has two aspects to it, right? How precisely it is translated and how much relevance it is for the current readers, how it will add value to their life, how it will benefit them. So there is no need for an external source of illumination that is well conveyed by saying electricity is not required. as at present time, immediately when people think about light, they think about electricity. Right? So I just wanted to highlight this part, that somebody might come and say that, oh, Prabhupada added a word which was not there in the purport. But then an Acharya, when Acharya translates, it's translated with regards to precision, which Prabhupada is doing by giving us word by word meanings. He's also making it very relevant for current readers, as you will see, as you've seen, by adding the word electricity here, right? So, so such is the abode of Krishna, and when one goes there, does not return. So the devotee should be more attached to devotional service, because once he reaches this abode that Krishna is talking about, he never returns from there. Right? By just being devoted to Krishna, by surrendering to Krishna, right? All this Maya that Krishna is talking about in this section, the material modes and this tree and everything, they will be overcome. Even though they seem insurmountable, Krishna is saying you cannot perceive them. You don't know what is the end and what is the beginning of this world. But then you can transcend it by holding on to the devotional service of the Lord. Avanti Brahman in the 11th canto, he says this very much. You know, the story of Avanti Brahman, you all might have heard it. He was a big miser. He wouldn't spend a penny on his family, on his house, on anything. So slowly everybody left him. His family members leave him, his business crashes, right? And then he realizes, right? Then this knowledge is revealed to him, and he realizes that there's nothing for me here. Right? And then he says this in one of the verses that he says, right, that etam sasthaya paratmanishtam adhyasitam purvatamir maharishibhi aham tarishyami durantaparam tamo mukundangri nishevayeva, that I will be able to cross over this ocean of material nescience by being firmly fixed in service of the lotus feet of Krishna. Mukundangri nishevayeva. And this was approved, this was done by previous acharyas. And so more we become attached to Krishna, more we will be liberated from material world, and ultimately we will attain the spiritual world, which is the ultimate perfection of life. And this is the 6th. For one who is too much attached to the material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. So connecting with somebody who already has this knowledge is what takes us towards detachment. Okay. This is a very important verse. Mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana shastani indriyani prakrti sthani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Right? So Mamsha. So Krishna is telling that all living beings, they are my amsha, they are my part. They're eternally my parts. Sanatana, the word Krishna is using is Sanatana. And they're undergoing karshati. So the word karshati is struggling hard. So what is a karshati? That we are struggling and suffering in the material existence because of manha sashtani indriyani. Manha sashtani indriyani, that the 6 senses, which include the mind, that is the cause of our suffering. So this verse is having 2 parts, and then there's a combination. Right? So Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. This part of the verse is telling a very important philosophical truth, that the living entity is eternally part of Krishna. Impersonalists have this idea that eventually we'll become one with God and we'll merge with his existence. But here it is said that we are part. So we are a part, we will merge? No, we are Sanatana. We have always been a part of Krishna. Like we are Mamai Vamshu Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So we always have been an Ansha of Krishna, right? So Mama Amsha, we are his part, right? So we are not just sparks of spirit, we are we are part of the spiritual person, right? So if Krishna is like a big fire and we are like sparks, right? So we are qualitatively same to Krishna. And then the second part of the verse is Manashashtani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. So Karshati is that we are struggling and suffering, right? And this has been talked about across Bhagavad Gita. 8th chapter, 14th verse, Dukhalyam Ashashvatam, Krishna says. In the 9th chapter, Anityam Asukham Lokam Evam Praptasya Bhajasva Mam, that is Anityam Asukham Lokam. And then in the 13th chapter, where Janma Mrityu Jara Vadhi Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. So Krishna has been repeatedly telling us that Karshati, there is struggling and suffering here. But here, so as I said, we have heard about this many times, that how this world is a place of misery and the living entity is suffering here, right? But then here, Krishna is adding another important information, that it's Mana Shastani Indriyani, that all the suffering is happening because of the mind and senses, right? That's the important part here. So generally, people think that the senses are the source of happiness, but that is very insignificant happiness. But here Krishna is saying that it is a source of suffering, these senses. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he's saying that he's yes. Okay, I can find what I was thinking. So yes, so the mind is the chief, is the most important agent, which is driving us into the material existence, right? According to our interaction with this world, we can go up, we can go down, we can go in different directions. So, okay. Okay, yes. Mamai Vamsho. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. Spirit cannot be cut into pieces. Right? So we are not like cut piece, we cut out of Krishna. No. Krishna is always complete. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udasate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Vivavashishyate. So he's Purnam. Even though the whole creation is coming from him, he's still Purnam. And we are just qualitatively one with the Lord, a part of it, just as the parts of gold are also gold. Okay, so from the 8th verse, Krishna is going to slightly change gears. I'll take a pause here. Anybody has any thoughts or comments, questions, anything on their mind that you'd like to have discussion around?